Engine ingestion New Year's. On December 31st, 2022, Courtney Edwards worked her shift as a ramp agent for Piedmont Airlines at Montgomery Regional Airport in Alabama. The 34-year-old mother of three was handling an Embraer E-170 regional jet that had just arrived from Dallas with 63 passengers still on board. The aircraft had a broken auxiliary power unit, so the captain left both engines running. Ramp agents attended two safety briefings emphasizing that no one should approach until engines were off and the rotating beacon light was extinguished. The first officer opened his cockpit window to warn ground crew that engines were still operating. Surveillance video showed Courtney walking directly in front of the number one engine. The spinning turbine pulled her off her feet and into the engine. The airplane shook violently. The left engine automatically shut down with a loud bang. Passengers felt the impact. Emergency services arrived within minutes. Courtney was killed instantly. OSHA cited Piedmont Airlines and proposed a $15,625 fine, sparking public outrage over such a small penalty for a death. The Forgotten Tool. On July 3, 2024, a Varesh Airlines Boeing 737 arrived at Chabahar Konarak Airport in southeastern Iran. The ground crew began a ground-run engine test on the right engine. A safety exclusion zone was established around the running engine. Aboulfazl Amiri, an aircraft ground engineer, realized he had left a tool near the engine and returned to retrieve it. He bypassed the safety zone. Boeing 737 engines can spin at up to 15,000 rotations per minute. The spinning turbine's suction immediately overpowered him, pulling him into the engine. His body was destroyed instantly. The engine subsequently caught fire. The fire brigade arrived quickly and extinguished the blaze. Amiri's remains were then recovered from the engine. Iran's Civil Aviation Organization launched a formal investigation, though findings have not been made publicly available. Turbulence death at 37,000. On May 21, 2024, Jeffrey Ralph Kitchen and his wife Linda departed London Heathrow aboard Singapore Airlines Flight 321, a Boeing 777 bound for Singapore. Jeffrey was 73, a retired insurance professional and musical theater director from Thornbury, England. The trip was their last big holiday, a 6-week tour around Asia. 10 hours into the flight, the aircraft encountered sudden extreme turbulence over Myanmar at 37,000 feet. The aircraft plummeted 6,000 feet in minutes. Unbelted passengers launched immediately into the ceiling. Food, cutlery, and debris hurled throughout the cabin. Ceiling panels were damaged from the impact of bodies. Jeffrey, who was not wearing his seatbelt, suffered a fatal heart attack, triggered by the violent forces. The pilot diverted to Bangkok. Jeffrey was pronounced dead. His wife Linda was rushed to hospital with injuries. Over 70 passengers were injured, with 20 requiring intensive care. Singapore Airlines offered compensation, and the incident reignited global debate about mandatory seatbelt compliance during all phases of flight. Stowaway in a garden. On June 30th, 2019, a Kenya Airways Boeing 787 departed Nairobi on a 9-hour flight to London Heathrow. At least 2 men had hidden in the landing gear compartment before departure. At cruising altitude around 40,000 feet, temperatures in the wheel well drop to approximately minus 60 degrees Celsius, and oxygen levels become negligible. As the aircraft descended over South London at approximately 3,500 feet, the landing gear compartment opened. One frozen body fell out and plummeted 3,500 feet. The body landed in a back garden in Clapham, just 3 feet from a man who was sunbathing. A neighbor heard a loud thud. "At first I thought it was a tramp asleep in the garden," the neighbor said. "One of the reasons his body was so intact was because his body was an ice block. I had a closer look and saw blood all over the walls of the garden. I realized immediately that he had fallen. A plane spotter tracking the flight on an app saw the body fall and arrived at the scene with police. After landing, police searched the landing gear and found a bag, water, and food. A second man was found in the wheel well, alive but unconscious, making him one of the rarest known survivors of a wheel well stowaway attempt. The victim was never publicly identified. Hair in the machinery. On August 30th, 2022, around 10:20 at night, Germani Thompson was working as a ground support agent at Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport. The 26-year-old from Reserve, Louisiana, was unloading luggage from a Frontier Airlines flight using a belt loader, a motorized conveyor system. Germani's hair became caught and entangled in the spinning machinery. The machinery pulled her in before anyone could react. Her mother later said the doctor told her that Germani's hair got stuck in the conveyor, and they tried to cut her hair, but they couldn't. Emergency services transported Germani to Oxner Medical Center. She died en route to the hospital. One coworker said no one could stop crying, and that he couldn't get the image out of his mind. Germani's mother recalled their last conversation. She said, "Mom, I'm on my way to work." I said, "Okay, I see you when you get home." OSHA opened a workplace safety investigation. By the way, if you find this informative, I cover stories like these regularly. Consider subscribing if you'd like to see more. Now back to the video. 14-year-old photographed falling. Keith Sapsford was born in 1956 in Randwick, a suburb of Sydney, Australia. Keith had an overpowering urge to keep on the move, restless and desperate to see the world. His parents sent him to Boys Town, a Roman Catholic institution, hoping structured discipline would help. Within weeks, Keith escaped and made his way to Sydney Airport. On February 22, 1970, in an era of lax airport security, Keith snuck onto the tarmac. He spotted a Japan Airlines Douglas DC-8 preparing for Tokyo and climbed into the wheel well. Keith waited for hours before the plane departed. Meanwhile, amateur photographer John Gilpin was outside the airport perimeter, testing a telephoto lens and photographing planes. As the DC-8 lifted off and the wheel compartment opened, Keith, unable to hold on, fell approximately 200 feet to his death. Gilpin snapped a photograph at that exact moment, capturing the silhouette of a boy falling feet first from the aircraft. Gilpin didn't realize what he had captured until a week later, when he developed his film. Experts inspected the aircraft and found handprints, footprints, and threads from the boy's clothing inside the wheel well. The photograph became one of the most iconic and haunting images in aviation history. Keith's father said, "All my son wanted to do was to see the world. His determination has cost him his life." Wheelchair ramp tragedy. On July 13, 2021, Ricardo Lopez Rangel, 78, and his family arrived at Los Angeles International Airport for a dream vacation to Oahu, Hawaii, on a Delta Airlines flight. Ricardo used a mobility scooter. Delta personnel directed him to board via a steep ramp. The family's request to assist Ricardo was refused by Delta staff. As employees pushed his mobility scooter up the steep ramp, the scooter tipped backward. Ricardo fell backward off the ramp, striking his head on the pavement. He sustained a skull fracture, head laceration, and occipital hematoma. Ricardo's mental status deteriorated within hours and continued to decline. He died on August 26, 2021, 44 days after the fall. He never made it onto the airplane. His widow and 3 children filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Delta Airlines and multiple contractors, alleging the ramp was at an unreasonably high incline, amounting to an unsafe, dangerous condition. 9 ejected over ocean. On February 24, 1989, United Airlines Flight 811, a Boeing 747 carrying 355 passengers and crew, departed Honolulu at 1:53 in the morning, bound for Auckland, New Zealand. 16 minutes into the flight, at 22,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, the forward cargo door violently blew out. The explosive decompression ripped a massive hole in the fuselage, approximately 10 by 15 feet. 9 passengers seated in rows 8 through 12 were ejected from the aircraft, along with their seats into the dark Pacific night. Among them were 2 married couples, Harry and Susan Craig, and Anthony and Barbara Fallon. The decompression was so violent that 2 engines ingested debris and failed. Captain David Cronin, a veteran pilot with over 28,000 flight hours, stabilized the crippled aircraft on 2 remaining engines. He executed an emergency return to Honolulu and safely landed the severely damaged 747. All remaining 346 passengers and crew survived. None of the 9 ejected passengers' bodies were ever recovered. After the cargo door was recovered from the ocean floor in 1990, investigators discovered a faulty electrical switch, leading to a mandatory redesign of all Boeing 747 cargo door mechanisms worldwide. Mumbai miscommunication. On December 16, 2015, Air India Flight 619, an Airbus A319 bound from Mumbai to Hyderabad, was being prepared for departure. The crew had been delayed because their inbound flight arrived late. The assigned pilot reached the cockpit just 7 minutes before scheduled takeoff. Ravi Subramanian, 54, a veteran ground service engineer with 22 years at Air India, was supervising the pushback procedure near the nose. During pushback, the engines were started. The co-pilot then released the parking brakes, switched on the taxi light, and applied power to begin taxiing. However, 4 ground personnel, including Ravi, were still around the nose. The co-pilot told investigators the ground staff had given clearance, followed by thumbs up. Ground staff refuted this completely. The aircraft began moving. Ravi was standing with his back toward the aircraft, wearing headphones. The aircraft's right-hand side engine came very close to Ravi and sucked him in. All other ground personnel ran away. Ravi was killed instantly. His body was so severely damaged it could not be sent for a standard post-mortem examination. Air India suspended both pilots, and investigators found non-adherence to standard operating procedure as a contributing factor. Pulled through the window. On April 17, 2018, Southwest Airlines Flight 1380, a Boeing 737 carrying 144 passengers and 5 crew, departed LaGuardia Airport in New York, bound for Dallas. Jennifer Riordan, 43, a Wells Fargo bank executive and mother of 2 from Albuquerque, New Mexico, was seated in row 14, seat A, a window seat on the left side. 20 minutes into the flight, at 32,000 feet over southeastern Pennsylvania, the number 1 engine's fan blade broke off due to metal fatigue. The broken blade tore through the engine cowling, and shrapnel struck the fuselage. Window 14A shattered instantly. The explosive decompression violently pulled Jennifer toward the opening. Despite wearing her seatbelt, she was partially ejected through the window, her upper body outside the aircraft. Passengers in nearby seats immediately unbuckled and lunged toward her. They grabbed her legs and lower body, fighting against the hurricane-force wind. Several passengers reached their arms outside the aircraft into the freezing slipstream to pull her back inside. They succeeded. Passengers with medical training immediately began CPR. Captain Tammy Jo Schultz, one of the first female fighter pilots in the United States Navy, took control. With one engine destroyed, the aircraft shaking violently and the cabin rapidly losing pressure, she executed an emergency descent. She diverted to Philadelphia. Schultz landed the crippled 737 safely 13 minutes after the engine failure. All 148 people on board survived, except Jennifer. Paramedics boarded immediately and continued resuscitation efforts. Jennifer Riordan was pronounced dead at the hospital. Her death marked the first passenger fatality on a United States airline in 9 years. The NTSB determined that a fatigue crack in the fan blade had gone undetected, and the FAA mandated ultrasonic inspections of all similar fan blades worldwide. Consider subscribing so you don't miss future content. Thanks for watching.